Hey, this is Daniel from Adorama. I'm here with Sharina, and as you saw in the last video, we made a lot of portraits of her in this space, and now I want to kind of walk through the process of how I come into a space, how I figured out how I'm going to shoot it, and how I set up some of the lights. So we're going to talk a little bit about the tech in this video. So whenever you walk into a location, you're going to either have lights there or not, right? In this case, we have some lights in here, we have some practical lights, we have the window, and you have to decide how you're going to work with those things. You can either use equipment like flash equipment to eliminate all that light, or you can work with just that light, or you can mix it together. I chose to mix it together because it's not a tremendous amount of light in here, and we would end up with blurry pictures, and also the fact that we couldn't control the light doesn't make the picture mine anymore. It basically makes it I'm victim to whatever light's in my space. But I didn't want to get rid of all the light. So the first thing I did was I came into the space and I set up my camera on the tripod. I got it roughly in the first shot position. And from that position, I did some ambient shots, right? I shot the room with just the ambient light in it, doing various shutter speeds and apertures to get where the room looked the way I wanted it to look. I knew I wanted to shoot it around f5.6 or f8. So I also know I want to be relatively low on the ISO. Because I want to use the lights in here and they're not so bright, I decided to be 400. That seems pretty good for this camera. And then I just worked around the shutter speed until I found something that would work. So again, I'm in the space and there's a certain amount of light in here. The first thing I want to do is set myself up with an aperture and shutter speed that I think will be good. I'm using a Profoto system and I've got my little remote on top. I have it turned off right now. I'm not worrying about that at all. And I'm in live view just now so I can frame up the shot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a photo. And again, you could put it in shutter priority or something to start, but whatever, or you can just do it manually by figuring it out. If I go to, let's say, like 1/5 of a second and I take a photo, right? Tremendously bright. So I know I don't want that, right? If I go all the ways to, let's say, 250, which is the sync speed of this camera, and I make a photo, right? Now my windows are really dark, right? They don't feel naturalistic. That's the part I'm really concerned with. So I'm gonna, try some exposures in between. If I go to 125, right, at 125, my windows actually look pretty nice. And Sharina's got a little bit of light on her, but not so much that I'm gonna be overly worried about that affecting my shot. It's probably gonna warm up her skin tone a little bit because obviously they're tungsten lights and I'm shooting with flash, but it should be okay. Then I can add my flashes in. And for this setup, I decided to go with a more traditional kind of portrait setup, which is kind of key light from one side, and you've got a background light or a hair light from the other side. I've got a Profoto with a strip bank in the back with a grid on it so the light doesn't fly all over the place. And I've got a 2 by 3 foot light in the front. And I can just turn my system on. This happens to have TTL, so I can try that to start with. Usually when you're in these kind of situations though, you're gonna use your TTL just to get started and then you're gonna work around that, right? The important thing here is now that I'm established with my base exposure, I don't wanna change anything on my camera. All the changes I make are gonna be to my lights. So if it's too bright or too dark, I'm going to adjust my lights, not my camera. So if I take this shot here, I can see that, yeah, it's a little bit overexposed actually. I'm looking at it here. For sure, the background light is a bit hot. The key light's not terrible, but it's definitely still a little bit hot. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to switch over to manual, and I'm going to take my background light, which is in C, and I'm just going to dial that down, let's say a stop. I'll do 2 stops, why not? And I'm also going to dial A down a bit. You can actually, if they were already in proportion the way that you liked it, you could dial the whole exposure down using the camera's compensation, but because they're different, I'm going to use each one separately. Try that. And that looks pretty nice. Now the only thing is, and one problem with this situation is I'm shooting into a bank of windows, right? So I kind of had to put the lights in a certain position because of that. This light here on the side is coming in at kind of a funny angle. We may have to either have her favor the other way so that it doesn't get on her face too much, or we can try to maybe raise it. Maybe try to raise the backlight. But I think it'll be both things. So try to favor just slightly, like just turn the whole chair and everything this way a little bit. Nope, the other way. There you go. Yeah, that's much more presidential. Okay, there you go. It's important to use the word presidential as much as possible when you're in this space.
And towards me.
Yeah, and towards Sharina at all times. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the little bubble level on my camera to make sure I'm level. That's good. Kind of cross your hands in front of you. Look this way slightly. Good. There you go. Boom. There you go. Okay, so I've decided to go vertical instead because the desk is really beautiful here and I want to get some light onto it. And if I went horizontal and got the whole desk in the shot, then that would be maybe too wide with her sitting behind the desk. So I've gone vertical. I'm using the level in my camera to give myself a nice level. Dave's got another light down at the bottom here. He's just got it sitting on the ground with the snoot. And we're actually adding to it a little bit of a warming gel too, just to add a little flavor to it. Partially because it was too bright. Even turned down all the way. Oh, that's perfect. It was just too bright, right? So the light was hotter than I needed it to be. I couldn't turn it down anymore, but it's a nice warm wood desk. So adding a little bit of a warming gel cuts down the exposure and makes it kind of nice. So that actually looks great, Dave. Okay, so I know that I've got a limited amount of time here with my subject, and I've got the first shot set up, but now I looked at my watch, I still have like 20 minutes, 30 minutes before they're gonna show up. So what I'm gonna do now is walk through some other shots that I might try to do. The reason I'm gonna do this is because then once we get the first shot, I can switch to the next setup and I'm not sitting there wondering what to do. So we're actually gonna test each one of the setups with a stand-in until the subject gets there. I know I wanna do this wide shot in front of the desk to show the whole ground and everything, but when she walked forward, I saw this could also be good for a nice headshot. So I'm gonna throw my 85 on, we're gonna raise the tripod, do a nice headshot here, and if you look, my lighting is probably not gonna have to change that much, which is really great. So let me just see what this looks like as it is. Okay, so I threw the 85 on, and actually surprisingly, even though she moved closer to this light, it wasn't so much closer that it made that much of a difference power-wise. So I didn't change the power of the front light at all. We just kind of adjusted the position slightly, and I just powered out the backlight to give us a little bit of a brighter, more powerful separation light here, and we've got a nice 3/4 portrait. Now I'm gonna throw my wide lens back on and get a nice wide shot of the room. Okay, so I just pulled back now to get the nice wide shot. And obviously our softbox that was in the back was totally in the shot, so we just kind of moved it off to the side to make it a little more side lit, which actually adds some strength and kind of shows the structure of her form. And in addition to that, I just have to make sure I'm watching, you know, her expression to keep her working this way so we don't get too much bright light on that side of her face, but otherwise it makes a really nice shot of the wide space. For this last shot, I decided to just really mix it up. I cranked my shutter speed up to 250 to get the windows nice and dark. I changed my white balance to tungsten white balance, which made my windows go blue so it felt kind of nighttime-ish. And then I threw a tungsten gel onto my main light that's hitting Sharina. So that way it was balanced, so she has nice white light on the front of her. But then on her hair light, I let it go blue, so the flash kind of goes into this cool feel and it gives this kind of nighttime shot. And what's kind of cool about this is because of the way the windows are set up and everything, it's dark where the shelves and the flags and the desks are, so you don't even know we're in the Oval Office. It's just literally a completely different vibe in the same space. So when you're in a situation where you have a limited amount of time, it's a good idea to kind of feel out the shots. And remember, if you're in one big space, you can do a lot of the technical stuff up front, get your base exposure, figure out for the room, and then just moving the lights around is not gonna really affect your exposure that much as long as you keep things within the same distance. Slight changes to the light so the subject doesn't have to wait, but you can get a lot of different shots in one spot. Right?
Are you allowed in here? Security.
I'm not supposed to. We gotta go, but be sure to subscribe to Adorama TV, and I'll see you next time on set.